Going to dive into a new short little tour right now. The tour that I'm going to discuss, it was pretty much all came about because Frank wanted to do a show with Los Angeles Philharmonic, and they only wanted to do it if the Mothers played, or that was part of the deal that got worked out. So he put together this band and this tour that I'm going to talk about after the intro, and then did a bunch of shows leading up to that final show, which we have a tape of, which that will be the last thing I talk about. Not today, but in another video. But that was the whole purpose of this little mini tour. We have 3 tapes from it. Let's get on and talk about the first one. What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie. Gonna start another deep dive, though it's a really shallow deep dive, into a new Frank Zappa tour. Our second, officially. Just finished up the final leg of the Summer-Fall 1974 tour. We will return to the European leg after a couple tours, and then we're going to go backwards with 74 just because everything else we'll do in normal order. But today we have a short little tour that we're going to start, probably only 2 videos, maybe 3, of the Mothers of Invention reunion tour of May 1970. I think there were just a handful of shows, like definitely less than a dozen, probably I think 6 is the number that most people think happened. We only have 3 tapes that circulate, so I'm only going to be talking about 3 shows. Only going to do 1 today. Probably, I don't know, we'll see how much I have to say about the other 2. But really, really interesting little outing from Frank. The band, Ray Collins on vocals, awesome. He sounds great. Billy Mundy, Don Preston, Ian Underwood, Motorhead Sherwood are there. And then we have Ainsley Dunbar on drums, Jeff Simmons on bass. So it's this really interesting, it is a really fascinating sort of transitional period for Frank. It is very much we have a lot of old 60s Mothers energy and some sort of Mothers songs, a lot of early Mothers tracks. And then you can definitely see the direction we're going. With a little bit of the energy, we have both Dunbar and Simmons, who would remain for the rest of the year. And heck, Simmons would inspire probably an entire musical or an entire concept album. Dunbar would stick around and be one of Frank's just most fundamentally transformative drummers. And yet we still have this hardcore Mothers energy. It's just a fascinating little tour where Frank's trying to figure out where he's going and what he's doing. And I think this show in particular, the one I'm going to talk about today, May 8th, or maybe the 9th, there's set lists for both of these. They're identical. I mean, even like one of them is called, there's a phrase, if you like Google or try to find these set lists on like, third-party internet documents, some of the same phrasing, not knowing the name of the songs are used. So I'm not sure if it is the 8th or the 9th. I think it's commonly agreed that it's May 8th, from the Fillmore East in New York. And this is just, the sound is pretty rough. I would say the only reason you really are going to listen to this is because you want to get a sense of what this tour was like, what was the vibe, what was Frank playing. But as far as being able to actually enjoy it without being like, okay, I think that's a pretty good solo. It seems pretty interesting. Dunbar's definitely loud. Yeah, Dunbar's presence is definitely, I don't hear Simmons anywhere. Don't know if Simmons is doing a darn thing. I think that's a keyboard solo. Yeah, sounds like Preston, I think. I'm not sure. It's a rough listen. So I cannot recommend this in terms of like being an enjoyable sonic, like, oh, this is pleasurable to my ears listening experience. But I think there are some really interesting moments. I think if we were lucky enough that Frank had officially recorded this, which I don't believe he did, any of the shows, I think these would be incredible listens just from a straight, what are these instruments doing to work together? How does Dunbar fit into this mix? There's when we get to the end, we get like an Oh No, Son of Orange County lumber truck, and Dunbar's playing a more traditional sort of Jimmy Carl Black beat. It's kind of interesting, the melding of sort of the eras there. But that's what it is, I think, more than anything. It's an interesting listen where you can hear there's probably amazing things happen, but the listen itself is so frustrating that you're just kind of like, I just want a better sounding version of this. I think that was my thought for most of this show. Oh, I just want a better sounding version of this. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. Lots of, I don't know if dead air is the right word, but a lot of between song spaces. The overall vibe of the show is Frank seems to be in kind of a bad mood in this one. I think this is one of those shows where if you did not know Frank Zappa, you weren't familiar with sort of his 60s satire, you weren't familiar with his stage presence with the Mothers, you would think he was just kind of a grumpy old jerk. I mean, I don't think he comes across as the most pleasant person. The audience is kind of very rowdy from the beginning. One guy in particular apparently keeps yelling a request for Louie Louie, so the rest of the audience kind of chimes in. So at one point, Frank's like, well, we're going to play Louie Louie, and half the crowd's like, no, don't do that. Frank finally gives in and plays Louie Louie for this guy. I think Ray tries to sing Plastic People, but Frank's like committed to the Louie Louie bit. He just keeps referencing it throughout the show. He seems to be kind of complaining the whole time about other bands. He makes references to like Jimi Hendrix and other things. There's a reference to the Doors, The End. He just seems to be like at this antagonistic relationship with the audience in a weird way that makes the show feel weird. There's a definite lack of flow to the way the songs go. Like he doesn't quite know what he wants to be. Like a couple of the songs, like Duke of Prunes, they play a Duke of Prunes, Who Needs the Peace Corps, Duke of Prunes medley, and the Duke of Prunes is kind of a long, jazzy, give a bunch of people solos. I think Dawn gets a solo. I think then Ian gets a solo, though with the sound quality, it's hard to tell. FC gets a solo. We have that more stretched out, leaning into sort of post-Hot Rats, but then eventually just what Frank would kind of be in the 70 and 71, where a bunch of shorter songs, long jams, which is kind of what he was doing with the Mothers also. But there is this, the vibe is just off for here. And it almost seems like, okay, let's get into the songs because I think I'll be able to explain it better. Opens up with him tuning up. The Louie Louie yelling is out of control. Ray does some talking. Oh my gosh. Even Ray's talking voice is amazing. Ray Collins, just absolutely amazing. Frank's kind of like talking about prostituting themselves, like, hey, we're going to play Louie Louie and prostitute ourselves. He's just really, I don't know, putting down people who may do Louie Louie. He's just got that, he's got a kind of a attitude from the beginning that, I don't know, I don't think particularly plays well, but whatever. And then the first song they play is Wonderful Wino. It sounds like it's the actual first song of the show. It doesn't sound like there's a weird cut. Wonderful Wino was co-written with Jeff Simmons. I think it's pretty telling that the first song that he plays after he gets this band together, he's got a whole bunch of old Mothers members in the band. He's got 2 new members, Ainsley and Jeff. And the first song he plays is a song he co-wrote with the bass player. Maybe going into the 70s, Frank really was looking to have a more collaborative relationship with another artist. This didn't work out for whatever reason. He ends up with Flo and Eddie. And we definitely get a year and a half of what feels like a more collaborative relationship. Like Flo and Eddie's energy, their sense of humor, the kind of vaudevillian shtick that they would bring to their shows became part of Frank's shows. And so, like, listening to this show in particular and just listening to, Simmons gets a co-writing credit on the first song that we hear. I'm like, okay, maybe the era, the Mothers era of Flo and Eddie really was a little more. We know Frank gets all the songwriting credit, but maybe there really was an attempt by Frank to be a little more balanced, to have a little more input from somebody else before he would just eventually take over the reins, for the rest of his career. He did do a great job of always catering to the talents of the musicians he had and, letting them rise to the top in, whatever setting. But there does seem to be, I don't know, the fact that Wonderful Wino is first just strikes me as meaning something. Starts with the Bringing in the Sheaves intro. I wish we could hear it better. Kind of sounds funky in the beginning. The solo kind of sounds super funky. I think maybe it's just the sound is rough. The solo kind of just comes to this abrupt stop, and then Frank does the $5 little thing at the end, and then the song just ends. We get some sort of vocal tomfoolery where it's almost like a secret word jam, a cappella. Band members are just saying random different things. Frank makes a follow the snake to the lake, Jim Morrison quote in there. We get several minutes of the band just kind of messing around, Ainsley starts playing this like kind of hyperactive drum beat that goes into a really short Big Leg Emma tease. Would love to have heard all of Big Leg Emma. Then we get the Louie Louie jam. And Frank admits that that dude in the audience is only just messing with him. He knows it. He recognizes that this guy is just messing with him, but he's gonna play it anyways. So he plays it anyways, Louie Louie. And then after this, we're like 12, 13 minutes into the show, and pretty much the only thing we've really heard is like a 4-minute Wonderful Wino, just a lot of messing around. Frank's like, okay, now we're gonna get to the actual part of the show that we planned. And they go into the Who Needs the Peace Corps Duke of Prunes medley. This seems random. Like this would not stick around through the Flo and Eddie eras. It just seems, I like it. I mean, I like the fact that Frank took 2 older songs and tried to make a medley so we can hear more old Mothers music. But it does just seem like he put a bunch of songs in a hat and said, all right, Who Needs the Peace Corps? Duke of Prunes. Let's make those work. It's an instrumental take on Who Needs the Peace Corps. Beautiful melody, beautiful melody in this medley. A beautiful medley in an odd medley. Frank's melodic skills early on in the Mothers, his ability to write just melodies that just stayed in your soul are just phenomenal. Kind of gets heavy at times. We had like a heavier little section in it. I wish it would be awesome to hear this in like a pristine quality. And then we kind of make this awkward transition into Duke of Prunes. And the Duke of Prunes is slow. It's slow. Yeah, it's slow. That's all I got to say is the Duke of Prunes is slow. And then we get a keyboard solo that I think is Preston. It sounds really Preston-y and just some really cool, interesting sounds. And then I think we have an Ian solo that sounds a little more melodic and not as like noisy. Then we get a Frank solo, which is really nice and builds patiently, and kind of Frank is taking his time, and it's a relatively patient solo for any point of Frank's career. And then that goes back into Who Needs the Peace Corps for a while. I think it's more interesting than it makes any sort of sense, but it's here. Then we get How Could I Be Such a Fool? Before this, Frank is conducting the audience to do the vomit thing where they, whoa, and they do that for a while. He complains that this crowd doesn't want to do audience participation. They sing How Could I Be Such a Fool? Collins sounds amazing. Also, a slow version of this. I thought that maybe my tape was slow. But then when we get to Colony Vegetable, that's at a normal pace. I'm like, no, these are really slow performances. I think as someone who knows this song and loves the song and loves Colin's voice, I'm like, oh, I kind of like this slow version. I think if I was new to Frank going to the show, I'd be like, wow, this band just has no energy. It's weird. That goes into a pretty interesting little segue, random, but it works, into Son of Mr. Green Jeans. And it's Son of Mr. Green Jeans because it's essentially Mr. Green Jeans. Ray sings Mr. Green Jeans. It's awesome. And then we go into like the big long jam section. So we get like Mr. Green Jeans, the Uncle Meat version, into like this extended sort of jammy thing, sort of the Hot Rats version. So it is this interesting mix of the two. I think we get a keyboard solo, a sax solo, really good sax solo, a blistering sax solo, another Frank solo that's pretty more of an attack mode type solo, and then we get a Son of Mr. Green Jeans reprise. Interesting, I think works better than the Who Needs a Peace Corps Duke of Prunes melding of things. How Could I Be Such a Fool? And the Son of Mr. Green Jeans. It works. And then we get the My Boyfriend's Back medley, which is a whole bunch of like 50s era songs of all kinds of different sort of moods and tempos. Ends with like a short little Night Owl snippet. Where are my notes? I went the wrong way on my notes. Oh, a short little Night Owl snippet. And then after that, we get like a short little Tiny Sick Tears jam, in which apparently Simmons is doing too much, and Frank's like, hey man, dude, don't do so much, like don't quite be so elaborate. And then he's going to go back into the Tiny Six Tears rant, and he goes, oh, never mind, let's just have a bass solo. So then Simmons gives us a bass solo, and then Frank comes in and says, oh, I'm tired of that monologue anyways, I don't want to do it anymore. So they abandon the Tiny Six Tears monologue, and then Frank starts to set up the next song, which is A Gone by Stravinsky. A little minute and a half of that before they jump into Call Any Vegetable. This is sort of a what we're going to get, this little Stravinsky into Call Any Vegetable. It's the pretty much the standard rock version we're going to get for the next 2 years, with a really nice Frank Zappa solo in the middle, like a nice 3-minute solo, low key, patient, starts off with a nice thinner sound, builds and gets more aggressive as it goes. When we drop back into the Call in the Vegetable, we don't get that flow and eddy back and forth. We get a little bit of a Ray and Frank Zappa exchange. And then Frank just starts like, almost like audience pandering, and just starts naming a bunch of old Mother songs, just like throwing them out, and the crowd cheers, and then they go back into Call Any Vegetable. Really interesting moment. And then after that, we get a Oh No, which also feels really slow. Son of Orange County, which has such an incredibly different vibe. I just finished listening to Summer Fall 74 shows, in which that Son of Orange County is just, it's like the Roxy version, just like this little prog epic. Just the vibe on that is so incredible. This is that definitely more really, almost motoric, krautrockish sort of 60s JCB energy. And to hear Dunbar do that, and Dunbar's sound just overwhelms the sound. Like, it would be awesome to have a mix where Dunbar is like balanced in the mix and not like, whoa, Ainsley doing some great things. A really funky kind of soaring FC solo. Eventually we end up in the Orange County Lumber Truck. We get a little Linda Lou, little sort of, I think it's a 50 song, just a little snippet of that thrown in there for good measure, just to make things hectic. This is the chaotic arrangement of the Orange County Lumber Truck, where Frank's trying to do just weird things, like every 4 bars or whatever it is. And then we get a long drum solo. We get a pretty long drum solo. Most of this is just a long drum solo, percussion solos together. And then we go back into a reprise of Orange County Lumber Truck, and the show ends. The flow is completely off. It's a weird set list. You can tell Frank is he's in a transitional period. You're like, what does he want? Like, I don't even know if going into the show Frank had any sense of like what he wanted to put across. Like with the Mothers in the 60s, you knew there was that chaos element that he always wanted to push. Just frantic, chaotic moments versus really long, let's just let the band soar. We're going to have both of those, and they're well balanced in the 60s. Here, I just feel like it's an interesting listen. I wish it sounded better, and maybe my opinion of this would be better, but considering the sound quality, consider just the fact that it never really seems to click. There are some moments that this band is good. The Duke of Prunes solos, the Son of Mr. Green jeans sort of stretching out. That's about it, those moments. I guess the My Boyfriend's Back medley with all those 50 songs is kind of fun, but we have good sounding versions of that elsewhere. Really, really, really interesting listen. Obviously at this point, I'm not going to rank it because it's the only one I've done. So it is number 1 from this short little tour right now. But if you decide to check this out, it's on the internet, it's on YouTube's. It's a rough listen. It's not the best sound quality. It takes a while to get going. There are some highlights, but yeah, it's an interesting one. So that's all I got. I don't know what else to say about this. I was more frustrated and intrigued about, wow, I wonder what this sounds like with good sound. I don't believe this has been recorded. I don't think there's any indication of anything that's been released so far that Frank recorded any of these shows. Or the show ends with sort of this, the tour ends with like him playing with I think the Philharmonic. I think that's who it is. Maybe he recorded that one, but these sort of run-up shows to that final show, I don't think he recorded. But yeah, so that's it for now, for this week, for this day. We'll get to at least one more show, maybe both shows next weekend. But yeah, That's all I got. Let me know if you check this out, thoughts, all that kind of stuff. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if I messed anything up or missed anything of importance, let me know. But yeah, that's all I got. Peace. Talk to you later.